Good afternoon. Well, we're back in Virginia, and how appropriate. You know, Virginia is named after the Virgin Queen. That's Elizabeth I. So it's somewhat important, I guess. It also tells you about the thinking of this Commonwealth at its origin and what it must have meant to have a revolution, to step away from a monarchy, and from George III in that case, when this was going on. And so now we battle again over this question of monarchy and the absence of law and directives as they come full into the head of some individual who is less politely referred to as a dictator. And the one person we're talking about is Trump, who's the one person who seems to understand that the only way he becomes president again in a vehicle that he's comfortable with is by distorting the system and overthrowing our democratic system and installing himself as an autocrat, a monarch, a dictator. And, you know, Hamilton was not terribly uncomfortable with this and said so in the Federalist Papers. He explained that this was necessary on some occasions. And we did have Adams argue before the newly established Congress on the Senate side how we should be referring to the presidency as His Excellency. And what we're talking about is the early embers of the Federalist Society back then, carried from that moment all the way forward to the present. And if there's a philosophy, if there's a law that they embrace, it is this notion of a single executive who trumps, if you will, pardon the expression, democracy and the vote of the people, because what can they know? And here's the kicker that explains a lot today, and it is that from the beginning, they were a clique, they were a hierarchy, they were the rulers. And I'll get to that in a moment. Let's, for example, take a look at Judge, I call her Loose Cannon. She has attacked everything that we hold dear in terms of process that makes sense. And I've gone over this before. You know, her dependence on an executive privilege that doesn't apply. Her dependence on attorney-client privilege that doesn't have anything to do with, if you will, top-secret documents. But nevertheless, she said them, and she's now called upon a special master, which is a crazy idea, to review these things of which she can't review while she's asked and demanded and entered an order declaring that there'll be no investigation while the special master is considering this. And on Tuesday, the special master, Ray Deary, from New York, longer in the teeth, considered respected by both parties, so they say. But remember, this is what we hear before Mueller becomes an independent counsel or special counsel to the Justice Department. This is what we hear when Barr is considered by the Senate Judiciary Committee, despite the goings-on he did on behalf of Bush to insulate him from being challenged. We say these things about, oh, he's a good guy. And then they say they had a perfect career. They trade that career to do the bidding of the people in the Republican Party who believe in autocracy and monarchy and have a cult of personality that involves Trump. So what should we do? I think what we should do is on Tuesday when they meet with Ray Deary, they should test his independence by saying, we request that you decide right now that you are not necessary, that there is no attorney-client privilege that hasn't been considered, there is no executive privilege at all, that you are surplusage and unnecessary. And you can say it more politely than that, but that's the message. And finally, you have to accept the fact that you, as a Title III judge, that is, in the Department of the Judiciary, have nothing to say to control the executive department when considering its own documents. And that should be said, and it should be said loud and clear. And from the beginning, there should be an objection. Will they do that? you and I are more likely to levitate. Is it sensible? Yes. Is it strong? Yes. Is it the issue? Yes. Will they do it? No. In fact, what we really need is what I would call the Clear and Present Danger Joint Committee. And the Joint Committee is a committee of federal and state and local law enforcement joined together to consider how to approach the prosecution of the former President of the United States, given the violation of laws of the Constitution and how he presents a clear and present danger to America, not exclusively related to the question of these classified documents. And that they should meet and they should confer and they should draw up the appropriate instruments to prosecute Trump based on what we know he's done now and get it done within 30 to 60 days. And if they can't get an indictment in time, they should file a criminal complaint in the state and in the federal jurisdictions, which is entirely appropriate, doesn't require the grand jury, doesn't require extra time, and allows the grand jury to continue to sit on the charges. That's what we should do. And, you know, in terms of a sub-lap of what's happening as a result of ignoring the law and ignoring the difference between a constitutional right and a statutory one, we have Lindsey Graham, who's grandstanding. Now, is he grandstanding because he believes in the rights of a fecundated ovum? No. He's looking to divert us from the fact that he is a subject or target in the Georgia investigation. And he's also thinking, well, in the sweepstakes that's coming, there may be an opportunity to run for president. So he is churning the question of Roe v. Wade and asking for a limited time for abortions to be permissible and to pass federal legislation. He knows McConnell's not going to bring it to the floor. He knows the Democrats are not going to vote for it. He knows it's not going to pass. So why is he doing it? To cover his own vast behind. That's why. And because he is seriously thinking, not only may this protect me from the prosecution, it puts me in a position to run for president myself. I tried it once before. Maybe I can do it this time. And notice he's not saying anything about Trump. Not now, not today. We'll see what happens, what works down the road. But this is an example of what you have when you have fuzzy thinkers thinking and talking about the law and what we should do or not do with regard to this constitutional right that was unjustly, improvidently, and, in my opinion, in violation of the Constitution, compromised by Alito and the gang of thugs that are on the Supreme Court. And that's a whole other issue, of course. Now, we have the question of the international question, if you will. That is, what do we do with people who come here seeking asylum because they're threatened and in danger where they are? And the answer is we should do everything we can for them. So if they arrive in San Antonio, say, and they're there, and we want to consider asylum and those things that are related, then we should do it legitimately. We should do it together. We should meet our obligation as a nation state to make the processes that we have work. And if someone violates it, say, hey, Abbott from Texas, or that bookend from Florida or Arizona, we should seek to enjoin them from misleading visitors to this nation, telling them that, oh, we're going to send you someplace, it's going to be fine. But it's really Martha's Vineyard, it's an island, and it's not fine. We're going to send you to New York. It'll be great. You'll get all the things that you should get. Now, the flip side of that is, what should the locality do? Well, on Martha's Vineyard, they did everything they could, and they did find the resources to take care of the people because of the notion of a stranger in America is a person that we care for and help, despite how they got here, despite who brought them here, despite who deceived them in the process. That's what this is about. And I don't know if you listened to Mr. Adams, the mayor of New York, but he was talking about the shelter law that's been in place, I think, for 40 years in New York, which did not contemplate a humanitarian crisis, which he's saying we're going to have to do better than this if all of a sudden thousands are going to show up on our doorstep. And he pointed out how he's talked to, and others have talked to, the people who came there as a result of being driven there by buses and so forth, just dropped off there. And under the shelter rule, what they've done is they've given them shelter, and they're looking for jobs, and they're looking to take care of them. They're doing all the things that America should do, would have done in cooperation, would have negotiated to do. We're the nation operating under law and order, like the Republicans pretend when New York doesn't pretend. New York actually does it. But they were told that the same kind of promises that the people were told that were going to Martha's Vineyard. Oh, here, sign this, just join up. This is going to be great. You're going to enjoy this. We're going to get you a job, we get you a place to stay, we get you food, we get you medical attention. Well, it turns out that the people on the buses, some actually had active COVID cases. Some had stickers on them saying that you had to watch out for them. They were on buses together for 30 hours or so. And so this is our problem. Now let me return to the first principle. How could they be so inhumane? Because these people, that is, persons of color, not from America, going back to the elevator speech of Trump when he announced the first time, they are not people to them. They are persons of color. They don't deserve our recognition, because when you're a white supremacist, these people don't exist. That's the Republican Party. That was how the Republican Party decided to win elections, to play upon the prejudice and bigotry in the South. This is something the Democrats handled not so well themselves because of the prejudice in the South. When Jack Kennedy had the demonstration by Martin Luther King in 1963 in Washington, he knew he was going to take a hit. So did Bobby. But they helped the Freedom Riders. They did what they could. Some say it was one of the items that caused the death of both brothers and Martin Luther King. But that is the cost: blood and fortune to give rights, preserve rights, protect rights for the people who come to America. And now last night in Ohio, there was a special symbol. The people raised their hand up in a single finger in a demonstration that's evocative of what was happening in 1939 in Germany. In fact, the similarity is great. And years ago, I happened to appear in a movie as an extra with Treat Williams. It's called The Congressman. It's a good movie. But one of the aspects of it is whether or not he should get up and say the Pledge of Allegiance every day, because he was working on other papers and they saw him doing that. And they criticized him for it and suggested he was un-American. And in that movie, he gives a speech, and as an extra, I'm one of the people sitting in the audience watching it. And I think it's an interesting study, because that movie is about where we are today, except this is the ultimate worst part. This cult of Trump has a Hitler-like salute now as part of its demonstrations in Ohio. And the turnout wasn't as great as Trump predicted. But we are facing, because we don't enforce the law, this kind of thuggery in America. And don't kid yourself, it won't be long before, if we don't do anything, these people are knocking people to the ground just because they look older, or they're believed to be Democrats, or they've given in an op-ed, or they want to attend a meeting that these people don't want them to attend. All of it will happen. All of it. And that's why we need a committee, the Clear and Dangerous Committee, because we have to cut off the head of the snake. And every day we fail to act, we fail the promise of America. So, that's my thinking today. Hope you're well. And I'm back in my cathedral of trees on Sunday, holding forth on what I think are the values of democracy. All the best. Bye-bye.